Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, strippers, skippers and skinny dippers, welcome along to the Joe Spiver YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. And you join me for our third or fourth instalment of Slashing at Hacks, the little opportunity that I have to completely weaponise the asterisks that we place above books and little else in our little melodic introductions. And I take myself and my crisp £5 note down to a local superstore and purchase a rag produced either on the left or the right or the centre. We've looked at our political navigation system lately and it's told us to veer sharply left. So this week we are going to be looking at The Guardian Weekly, notably cheaper than most of the right-wing publications, which, read into that what you will. But as I'm sure you can tell by the dullness of the background, the mercurial and mysterious gaseous orb known more colloquially as the Sun, capital T, capital S, hasn't yet materialised this week. It's peak of the day, peak afternoon right now when I'm filming this, and it's dull as dishwater here. Unfortunately, so that's about it. Any more extracurricular activity that I need to talk to you about? The government of Great Britain and Northern Ireland having been advised by the European Convention for Human Rights overnight not to send illegal asylum seekers on a plane to Rwanda because they deem such a country to be unsafe for those people. The government is now seeking to circumvent those laws in order to deport them anyway. So that's that. But beyond that, everything seems good at the moment here in Britain. As you know, I have passed the Enabling Acts. I have gathered the military and have held much of the government hostage. And so this allows me to talk about things other than books. You will remember when I looked at the Spectator magazine last week, we looked at the Patek Philippe advertising on the back, extreme exorbitant timepieces that they think the clientele of the Spectator are going to buy. I think the Guardian is essentially funded by its fans. I don't think there are many sponsors, and so of course you have this marvellous little cityscape here on the back of the Guardian, with a woman here holding a cardboard placard which says "Save Our Planet," despite the fact that she's probably bought 7 petroleum-fueled vehicles just this week, has a caffeine habit that means that she buys 18 plastic cups a week, so as to drink vegan lattes, and of course ships 4 tons of avocados over from South America every week, and so has a bigger carbon footprint than Henry Ford does. But of course, because she's holding a nice, lovely cardboard placard, that means that she's a wonderful human being. Let me just declare my interests at the door, ladies and gents, because a few of you have been interested as to my political leanings, given that I'm going on and on and on and on about politics rather a lot. I am a classic right of centre, small c, social conservative who thinks that the fanaticism and tyrannical edges of the left and the right have been poisoned by populism. Donald Trump and many on the left have, I think, deliberately stymied debate and made sure that politics can't be talked about anymore. So those are roughly my positions. I believe in a reasonably small welfare state, but still with a social safety net. I am completely against almost all pharmacology and pharmaceuticals. I am other things such as that. I'm, as I say, a right-leaning conservative. So do please take all of my recommendations today with a pinch of salt. But let us get into the magazine. So the first article that I happened upon, or the first one that drew my attention, was that an issue concerning the procurement of protective equipment during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is just a small article on the side here. It concerns the Conservative peer Michelle Mone. During the COVID pandemic, a bizarre thing happened here in Britain. So you'd have thought, wouldn't you, that the equipment that would be worn by the doctors and the nurses and shopkeepers in the public sphere so that they could remain open if they were deemed essential. The equipment that they wore would probably have to align with some sort of objective pre-agreed upon standards so as to not be fatal to wear. You would have thought that that would have been a decent and conscientious thing to have done. That, of course, did not happen in Britain. What happened was anybody that was close to the government, whether it was a Conservative peer or perhaps even an ex-Prime Minister such as Mr. C, was able to nudge those whose fingers were on some buttons and were able to say, I know you need, I've got a shed, but by the way, back home in Wiltshire, I've got a shed load of masks that I can sell you for probably £400 million. And I know you need them really quickly, and you're not really bothered as to the appropriateness of such equipment. So I can sell you them for £400 million, and if they don't work afterwards, then you can't sue me. That's what happened in this country, and all of a sudden, lots of that scandalous stuff is coming out into the press. So this is the Conservative peer Michelle Mone, and she has acknowledged for the first time that she was involved with a company that was awarded government PPE contracts worth £200 million during the COVID pandemic. Now, I know that aesthetic appreciation and all ad hominem remarks rarely feature on this channel because I'm a stalwart of rationality and all that. Don't let anything else impinge upon you, but I'm sure you'll agree with me that this is a woman of dazzling beauty, Michelle Mone. I'm quite looking forward to the day in which I can lodge my briefing into her dispatch box. She is peculiarly alluring, isn't she? Anyway, so in a response to questions from The Guardian, the representative for their company said, the UK government was fully aware of Baroness Mone's involvement. Like many other peers and MPs on the high priority lane, she acted as an intermediary / liaison between PPE MedPro, which is the husband's company there, PPE MedPro and the Cabinet Office / Department of Health and Social Care. Where does it say how much they were paid? Yes. Last November, The Guardian reported that leaked HSBC bank documents indicated Barrowman, that's the husband there, Barrowman was paid at least £65 million from PPE MedPro's profits, then transferred £29 million into a trust for Mone and her 3 adult children. The Department for Health and Social Care is suing PPE MedPro for the return of the £122 million it paid for the surgical gowns but never used, claiming they were unsafe for NHS use. It almost seems as if you outsource all of your intelligence to something else, it's almost certainly going to go wrong rather than doing it internally. Anyway, so that's that. They're probably going to be in cuffs by the end of the month, which would be nice to see. And then as we flip through, there's all sorts about Rishi Sunak's AI summit that I wasn't altogether interested in. We looked at that last week. There is stuff. Border zone reimagined as a path towards peace in South Korea. Again, I skipped through them, not altogether that interested. And here, gentlemen, we arrive, of course, at the imposing, well, not the imposing US election, but it's around the corner temporally. I think it's about 12 months away now. Here, of course, pictured you have a weary and wrinkled and blundersome, completely senile fool, and you also have a picture of Joe Biden as well. See what I did there? Led you down a comedic path, and then dragged the carpet from under you. So yeah, 1 year out, most US voters don't want Trump or Biden. I'm continually amazed by the cartoon that is US politics. Again, I'm going to sort of declare my interest at the door. 3 or 4 years ago, I may or may not have been an adrenalised young gentleman that was caught in the Trumpian net, and all of a sudden found myself thinking that the entirety of the communist East was conspiring so as to make sure that Joe Biden would be the 70-whatever president of the United States. I went a little loopy, but frankly, thankfully I've come out of that mania and I'm now a conscientious individual, that I'm sure you'll agree. But yeah, so this just talks about essentially the American polity's apathy leading up to this new election. Trump is the front-runner for the Republican nomination in 2024, even as he faces felony charges over his attempts to overturn 2020's election. Trump faces 91 felony charges in 4 separate criminal cases that have effectively tightened rather than loosened his grip on the Republican Party, which, of course, is an example of Donald Trump's fertiloquence, because in 2016, did he not say that he could go onto Fifth Avenue and shoot anybody in the head and wouldn't lose a single vote or wouldn't lose a single acolyte over it? All of this is ringing true. I think this is an inevitable consequence of just how one of the nefarious effects of inextricably linking or making one personal worth and political acumen, so that if you, for example, suddenly find that the political or the politician that you have advocated for years and years and years is suddenly a fool, it not only hurts them to admit so, but it hurts yourself because you have tied an allegiance to them for so long. I think that's what it is, and I don't think technology is helping that. But yes, it's a bizarre article. It's obviously it's pretty downtrodden, and makes you think really terrible things about America and your political system. Apparently we've never had a situation where the empirical data on the economy and the perceived economic experience by people has been at such a great disjuncture. This is the biggest gap we've ever had on those two indicators, and you've got a solid majority of voters who say they're worse off. So yeah, good luck for a year's time, folks. As I say, my people that I employ for demography tell me that you lot are largely American, so don't know what's going on there. Here, next up, we have an extended piece on Louis Theroux. Again, many of you Americans might not know that Mr. Theroux is the most passive and least incisive journalist on the face of the earth. His career has been kept alive by a combination of brainless fandom and, of course, him being integrated in the Jimmy Savile scandal when he interviewed him in a very poor fashion and didn't get any truth out of him. So yes, this is a little bit of a longer piece on him. Louis Theroux's charm and cheek made him one of the best interviewers in the business. Just a palpable lie. Will he take it on the chin when Zoe Williams turns the tables? So yes, I just want to highlight one of the lines where the interviewer actually admits that Louis Theroux is a useless journalist. He never sounds rude or cheap or critical, and he often sounds a bit random. So subjects, faced with a combination of his total acceptance and naive curiosity, it would be churlish not to indulge, slip into the conversation like a warm bath. That is obviously not what a journalist should be. That is not Paxman or Dick Cavett or William F. Buckley Jr. That is not somebody that should be getting blood out of a stone and holding truth to power and making sure that those that would seek to conceal any sort of nefarious information have it wrung out of them by somebody who is paid to ask questions. This gentleman, all he does is talk to reasonably popular people with the cash wad of the BBC, get interviews with Anthony Joshua and Jimmy Savile and Pete Doherty and the Californian porn industry and things of that nature. Essentially gets interviews with them and talks a bilge and nonsense with them and gets no information out of them whatsoever. I've never been a fan, and of course, because he is useless, that is he then has a legion of fans who call him the best journalist that has ever existed, which is a curious social contagion of the 21st century that I won't dwell on here because I'll just get myself even more worked up. We have another article here. Is it right or wrong to post about conflicts on social media? By Hannah Jane Parkinson. This is full of historical truisms that come from people that can't be bothered to read big historical books and so try to condense any sort of historical sentiment in a little quote. And so she talks about the welcome irony is that Martin Niemöller's words about not speaking out are everywhere. If you're not already familiar with First They Came, his urging of resistance in the face of tyranny and persecution from history class or Holocaust documentaries, you may have seen it on Instagram during the past weeks. Niemöller's words, repurposed from a speech he gave in 1946, are a cautionary tale and mea culpa, deploring his own inertia in the face of Hitler's growing persecution of minority groups. His words, along with the Dietrich Bonhoeffer quote, silence in the face of evil is itself evil, have spread on social platforms following the latest outbreak of war between Israel and Hamas. Again, this is the classic example of somebody using deliberately cherry-picking a quotation which would seek to confirm their own worldview without having analysed it one little bit. Because, of course, silence in the face of evil isn't always evil, necessarily. It's just mistaken, and sometimes is an example of how human agency is completely stripped from you. So silence in the face of evil is demonstrably not always evil. So whoever said that, and whoever disseminates that quotation, is telling a mistruth, unfortunately. And then they talk about whether it's right to share things and whether it's right to, as it were, virtue signal, which we'll get into in a moment. Social media platforms have democratized influence and lessen the power of cultural media and political gatekeepers. If social media is the modern agora, then criticism of those not speaking out on important issues seems valid, especially if one is a public figure with a large social media following. In other words, you should be compelled to give your political twopence worth towards every single issue that arises in the headlines, which is absolutely maniacal. How can somebody with north of 1 million followers be expected to comment upon the ceaseless 24-hour news cycle every single day? How the hell can you expect that of somebody? But of course, this particular journalist, as soon as, Elon Musk would start to get on his high horse about something, or as soon as Joe Rogan would, not that I'm saying I agree with them, but if those two people were to get on their high horse about abortion, about healthcare, about Israel and Hamas, they, of course, would say that they ought to shut up and go back to their little quadrant of interested fans. They go on to talk about virtue signalling, which they think is a complete demonization on behalf of the right, which it obviously is not. But while virtue signalling has become a cynical phrase of the right, along with woke as a pejorative term, the idea that people might genuinely care about the world, outrageous, the critique of certain forms of tragedy posting as performative, whether by individuals or brands, isn't entirely unearned. So this is what people on the left get wrong all the time. They think, and I have some very, very, very weird and evil fellow travellers in this argument, but they think that whenever we say virtue signalling, we're just using it as some sort of pejorative, as some catch-all term to just bat off any criticism. That is obviously not true. What we mean by virtue signalling, when we're not against virtuous people telling people how courteous they are and making it known that they are virtuous in a virtuous way, such as saving a cat from dying and posting about it on Instagram, or helping people in Yemen or whatever, that's all jolly fine. What we detest and what we rightly call out is when people who, in their private lives, do not give a single damn about the issue that they are talking about online and then post it as if they are in some sort of weird, Hosannic, Mother Teresa-esque maelstrom about everything that they care so much about. That's what we despise. We despise duplicity and dishonesty and hypocrisy. That's all it is. And most of the time, let us not forget, that people that share information about the collapse of a hospital in Gaza or about the death of somebody who belongs to an ethnic minority at the hands of the police, or somebody who's been thrown out on the street as a result of austerity, most of the time, most people who post that stuff do not care about the subject and just want others to know that they are a virtuous individual. And that's what we rightly disagree with. I would rather you shut up and not say anything than just be a duplicitous, hypocritical piece of dirt. So yes, that's that. There are a few more articles that I highlighted. Can I find them? Quite possibly not. Is there any more honourable mentions? Oh yes, there is just the final bit on Britney Spears' new book, obviously ghostwritten, not written by her, which is called The Woman in Me. So it starts the article, the review. It's not really a review. It's essentially somebody who decided that they liked Britney Spears from the start and wouldn't critique the book at all, but have been paid to write 1,000 words on it. Over the course of Britney Spears' career, she was repeatedly subject to narratives constructed to disempower her. Not true. She was a teenage pop star presented as a virgin, then scolded for a sexualised image sold by those same forces. Now, I want to dig into this a little, and the whole context of sexualised female stars, and of course those people that go onto reality TV. If you have an enterprise and a business model and an industry that promotes girls and boys, but primarily girls, because male and female sexualities are very different. If you have an industry that solely promotes somebody's aesthetic proficiency, in essence, if you're only rich and wealthy and famous, and you've only amassed fandom because you are attractive, as soon as you start to lose that aesthetic proficiency, of course, along that domain, you are not going to be valued as much as you were before. That much is just obvious. We can talk till the cows come home about whether we should have those systems in place and whether those industries should be a little more censured than they otherwise already are. We can have that chat, that's great. But if they exist, and you have an enterprise, the beauty industry with Maybelline and Rimmel and all that lot, that actively prize beauty, those people that aren't seen as beautiful are obviously going to be left out by that. And so as soon as Britney became, as it were, mad and as it were, slightly ordinary, this article berates the patriarchal tyranny that led to that, when in fact it was just the case that she wasn't beautiful anymore. It's an industry that prizes beauty. Again, we can talk about the faults of that till the cows come home, but as soon as we've got it, you cannot criticise it in that way. And then just at the last bit, anyone looking for starry anecdotes or studio vignettes won't find them here. Instead, The Woman in Me tells a focused story that makes inarguable the ties between patriarchy and exploitation, and deserves to be read as a cautionary tale and an indictment, not a grab bag of tabloid revelations. Again, stylistically, that's gorgeous, that's really good writing, but it all happens to be asinine. After all Spears has lost, the sharpness of her perspective is a miracle. She repeatedly questions why, whether as a teenager in a crop top corrupting the youth, or a 25-year-old getting drunk at the club, she was perceived as dangerous. May her truth pose a legitimate threat to the system that exploited her. That's pretty much covers The Guardian for this week. Whenever somebody in these pages talks about power systems or power dynamics or corruption or anything like that, they're usually, again, telling lies, and they're essentially just affirming, confirming their own worldviews. As you might tell, I'm not a fan of The Guardian Weekly, but for matters of political interest, I thought it would be worthwhile getting a copy. So I hope I didn't rant more than I should have done, or more than I ought to have done. It is getting even duller here. The clouds are amassing. It's probably about to pour down. And so I'm going to limit this before the world goes pitch black. But yes, I will be back tomorrow with my first little review, or my review of the first third of William Shearer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. I'm loving that and bounding through it almost as we speak. But yes, thank you ever so much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.